we talked about Morales, you and I, a couple weeks ago. Minnesota, man, they jumped in, signed him up, got him hot. He went on a 10 or 11 game winning streak, and they flipped him over to Seattle and picked up a couple of prospects. I mean, I don't know how good the prospects are that they picked up, but I mean, hey, there's a guy who was just hanging out. They brought him in, they got him going a little bit, and then they shipped him out and got something for him, man. But that was
back to the team he was playing with before.
Yeah,
Seattle had spent all kinds of money, bringing guys in to try to replace him, and then end up sending some prospects out just to get him back. So, yeah, there's other teams out there that are spinning their wheels in the front office, just like this one seems to be. But it's time to make some moves to try to bolster this club for the stretch, but absolutely without touching the Naquins, Fraziers, and Lindors of the world, and even some of the second-tier prospects. Build this team for the future. And I'm not talking about 2019. I'm talking about let's get it together for next year with a strong starting pitching core, and maybe we do need to resign ourselves to the idea that Masterson isn't going to be a part of that starting pitching core going forward, and we need to get what we can for him now. I'd be okay with that. But if you're a GM on another club, a contending club, are you going to roll the dice on Justin Masterson as the answer to your team's issues down the stretch this year? It would seem like a far-fetched proposition based on what we've seen from him this year.
National League team, Will. I have no doubt in my mind. I mean, look at Peavy. He was 1-9 and not looking good at all. And San Francisco said, "Hey, we need pitching, man. We'll send you some prospects," and they made the trade. I think that's the best bet. If you're going to trade Masterson, is going to be to the National League, because you got the natural half a run to a run drop that always happens when you switch over to a more of a pitcher's league. So between that and the small window of time for people to catch up to you and get some film on you, I actually think that Masterson wouldn't be a bad stretch run acquisition for a National League team.
Yeah, you may be right, and I'd be surprised if they move him, but I guess I wouldn't be shocked.
You're right. I don't think they're going to either. To be totally honest, I don't think they're going to move him, but I mean, I would be interested if I was them. And I go back to what Mike Brandenberry said, redistribution of assets on the payroll in the offseason. Look at the young, you've still got position players coming up. We know Lindor is going to be on this team next year. Who knows, but you've got Aguilar coming. You've got guys like Moncrief. We've got Naquins and Fraziers over the next year, 2, 3, working their way up. So I think a lot of your youth in the core is in your position players, and you've got Kluber. You don't have to pay, I mean, they're going to pay him some money, but you don't have to pay him crazy money for like 4 more years. I mean, he's not buku bucks until like 2019. So you can still, I think you redistribute your assets into the rotation. Go out there. If you're going to spend money this offseason, go get a stud pitcher. Don't spend any money in $5 million here, $7 million here. Spend $15 million on a stud or whatever. Find your guy. Go out and get one of the top pitchers and add him to this rotation. And instead of trying to add position players, because I think your young core, your whole lineup can be your own drafted and developed guys.
Yeah, I think we'll see that in the next 2 or 3 years, where we don't feel we need to go out and sign a Nick Swisher anymore, because you've got some corner players, first, third, left, and right,
yep,
that are in your system that are coming, that'll be here shortly, and you're not going to need to make moves like that seem more like PR moves than anything else. Certainly, that's what Nick Swisher. I don't know. You call it crazy, but you've got a $15 million cheerleader essentially on your roster, and no team can afford that. He's had a couple big hits this year, but still flirting with Mendoza every day, and you're just not getting it. It's got to be seen right now as a mistake by the front office, and hopefully with some of those guys we talked about coming up at the corner positions, you just won't have to make moves like that going forward.
You're listening to the Sports Fix. J-Rock and Dan Wismar talking. We're talking some Tribe, and I want to shift gears here. We've talked about the Indians, and you know what? You and I can pick this up Wednesday, because we'll be right on the verge of the trade deadline. We'll see if there's any talks or anything. Who knows? Maybe something will have happened by then. Maybe they'll have become a seller by then. I mean, who knows? But let's shift gears. I know people have been waiting an hour and a half into the show. Let's talk a little bit of Browns training camp. First thing I want to mention is the stat that I brought up at the beginning of the show. We talked about how we both thought there'd be some, and I still think that the total number will be record-setting by the time it's all done. But I was a little bit surprised that the two dates this weekend, as well attended as they were actually not the two highest of Browns training camps since they've kept track of it, because there was actually the first weekend date last year and the year before both drew higher. Isn't that a little surprising with the whole, Johnny football and all that stuff?
Yeah, it may be, and it also might have to do with the fact that they did cut off the sales of passes to the camp. I mean, I'm not exactly sure how that all worked out or how far short of last year's totals they were, but I know that they were selling a limited number of passes this thing, and weather wasn't terribly promising or whatever over the weekend. It wasn't bad, but there was some threats of showers, so that might have kept some people away. But I was going to ask you if you were out there on that zip line this weekend. I thought maybe we could share.
No, but they did add that. But
taking the zip line down.
No, but I did check it out.
If that ever happens, I want you to get video.
Oh, absolutely. I'm all about that. I'm up for that kind of stuff, man. I may have to do that before we're done here. But yeah, they added the zip line. Let's talk beginning of training camp. I want to go back to Friday, right after we got off the air here and training camp started to get underway. We've talked, you and I, John McMullen, Dr. Football, all the football guys, we've talked off ad nauseum about John Manziel and the front office and every story that came up over the weekend. A lot of people wondered what the Browns were doing, weren't doing, whatever. I think the Browns intentionally waited until Friday, and they in a very professional way, they threw John Manziel under the bus when the entire focus of the media was here to see it. I think they waited. Instead of making little statements along the way, they waited. They talked to him privately, then they sent him out there on Friday with his prepared statement to read, and they made him very humbly and contritely address the media. And they also changed the quarterback competition. And they, for all intents and purposes, Johnny Football's offseason cost him the reality of most of his competition as the starting quarterback. And I think the Browns made that clear for the first time when he reported on Friday.
Well, I think you're right about that, but I also think that what the Browns saw in the mini camps and the workouts and the OTAs and everything else, which wasn't apparent to the media, we kept hearing it when they would be asked, and Pettine would be asked, Hoyer's ahead of Manziel. Hoyer's way ahead of Manziel. That's all we heard, a litany of it. And now, for the last 2 days, and 3 counting today, everyone else has been able to see it. And everyone who has seen it says exactly the same thing that Pettine and everyone else has been saying from the get-go. Hoyer's way ahead. Hoyer's the starter. Because he's better right now, not because of any off-the-field antics of Johnny Manziel, because Hoyer's better. Now what they've been saying has been put out there for all to see over the last few days as Hoyer has looked sharp, not so sharp Saturday maybe, but certainly Sunday, when everyone consensus was, whoa, not close, Hoyer better. So
yes.
Yeah, you're right, and they had a very well-scripted, and I tweeted over the weekend. I said I thought that in general, all things being equal, that Haslam, Pettine, and Farmer have handled not only the Manziel issues but the Josh Gordon issues very, professionally, thoughtfully, responsibly. They haven't overreacted. I think I've been happy with the way this front office has dealt with it, even to the point of saying now, sort of, Pettine made a point of this to say, look, Johnny's here. He's in camp. He's on football now. He's all football now. Yep. They had Manziel trotted out to say, yeah, made some mistakes, sowing some wild oats, having my fun. Now it's down to business. And so, yeah, it was all handled very well. I liked Haslam's comments. We expected better of him, basically, is what he was saying. We're a little bit disappointed in young Johnny. But, hey, we're moving forward. We're all business now. And let's put this stuff behind us. Pettine decided to keep totally his conversations with Manziel, private. not get into it. No point in getting into it with the media. But I think the best thing that could have happened was that they went out there on the field and let all the media and all the fans see just exactly what they've been saying, and that is Johnny's our backup quarterback.
Well, that's where I was getting ready to go next with this. But my point was more, and when I said they did it professionally, but threw him under the bus, and what I meant by that was it was very clear to all the media there that he had been, kind of slapped on the wrist when he showed up, and he did have to go out there and make that statement, and he handled it. But I think the Browns, in my opinion, and I've talked to some people who said this was their thought process, was they kind of turned the spotlight tables on Johnny Manziel since he wanted to do so much publicly. I mean, they figured, you know what, then we'll kind of make this public without embarrassing him, but instead of dealing with it internally, they dealt with it internally in a way that made it very clear to everybody that it had been addressed and that there were some revelations of it, and then everything's back to football now. But I thought, part of me said, they're going, you want to live by the sword, die by the sword. You know what I mean? Like, and part of that too was, we asked you to slow down. You ignored us. That's cool. We're in camp. We straightened it out. Now we're playing football. But that being said, I want to get onto the second thing of what you said, which is, and I know people are going to say, oh, well, you're a Hoyer guy. I don't care. If you were there this weekend, because hundreds of people told me this to my face, wow, we really thought the media was just hyping Brian Hoyer and that Manziel was just going to be, he really wasn't. Not saying he didn't do okay. He did great for a rookie going out there and doing his thing. But there were so many people that thought he was going to literally walk on water on his way to the field. Like they thought, man, we were just going to see this guy that on Saturdays was ripping up the SEC. He's just going to be, that's not the way it was. A lot of people were like, wow, either Manziel's not as good as we thought or Hoyer's way better than we thought. And it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of both, to be honest. And I don't know how long Brian Hoyer holds up. I know there's a lot of people concerned about his durability, which there should be. Until he plays more than 3 games in a season, you should be worried about that. But I'm with you. The best thing the Browns did was put those guys out there for everyone to see and say, here, we're not holding anybody back. Clearly there's a difference right now. And when there's not, then we'll have something different to talk about.
Yeah, and then we might be singing a whole different tune after 3 or 4 exhibition games.
Yep.
When we see some baptism under fire with Johnny, we see him grow. Clearly, he's going to get better. I don't think anybody's ever said that doesn't have a good football IQ, or that he's not going to work hard or not going to try hard. And we know he's got some unique mobility abilities. And those will undoubtedly show themselves as we get into some exhibition games. But I don't care if he looks like Fran freaking Tarkenton in the exhibition season, running around. He's not going to be the consistent every down, every series kind of put the ball where it's supposed to be field general that Brian Hoyer has already shown he can be. So to me, it's all a matter of, can Hoyer stay healthy, like you say? And God forbid he gets hurt. Let it happen, 10 games into the season when, Manziel has at least had a chance to, find out where the water cooler is and find out where his properly colored cleats are located in his locker, so he doesn't trot out on the field wearing some bright neon yellow stuff and has to get sent back to the locker room to change.
You know what? I'll tell you what. I want to. Yeah, that's funny.
It's just more attention whoring by Johnny.
Absolutely, and then the excuse that came out afterwards that he wanted his feet to show up on film. He wanted his. Well, let me tell you something. Neon green doesn't stick out on green grass as much as neon orange shoes do. So I'm pretty sure your orange shoes would have showed up better on film than your green shoes. I'm just thinking you wanted to sell some of those neon shoes and you thought you'd wear them out there for a good commercial endorsement, but whatever. Shoegate it is. But here's the other thing. Let's stop talking about the past. And everybody goes, Hoyer did this in 3 games. Let's talk about now. I was at training camp. I saw the difference between Brian Hoyer, and I'm just going to take Manziel out of the equation. You can tell physically, and I mean muscularity, and I don't mean it's not like he showed up like Hulk Hogan, but you can tell physically, you can tell the demeanor, you can tell everything. Brian Hoyer is better than he did last year. He's better than the same Brian Hoyer at this point a year ago. You know what I mean? He's confident. He's very